Good morning. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. It's a big day for the Cleveland Browns for the Brook Park project. We're about to hear from the governor and his remarks on his late night signing of the biennial budget. That's the budget for the state of Ohio for the next 2 years. We've got a live picture here down in Columbus at the State House where the governor will discuss his budget. Of course, it covers everything from taxes to health care to spending on education. So his remarks are going to be wide-ranging, but of course in Northeast Ohio, all eyes were on that plan to use $600 million in unclaimed funds to support the Browns' Brook Park transformational project, as it's being called by Republicans at the State House. It is a massive, massive project, more than $3 billion when all is said and done. That will make, and the private investment being offered up by the Haslams themselves at $2 billion, makes it the second largest ever privately funded project in the state of Ohio, at least that $2 billion portion. That's second only to the Intel microchip plant that's currently under construction east of Columbus. So that puts into scope how big that whole project is, not just because it's an enclosed stadium, but the surrounding development that's going to happen on that piece of property. There was one small line item veto when it comes to what they're really calling the Stadium and Cultural Unclaimed Funds Plan. This idea of taking $1.7 billion from the Ohio Unclaimed Fund. That's money that, yes, does belong to Ohioans. I'll give you an example. Let's say you had a parent or a grandparent who passed away. Maybe they had $20, $50, $100 left in a bank account and it went dormant. The bank doesn't keep that money. What it does is it sends it to the state of Ohio, to the auditor. The auditor is then responsible of keeping that money. That fund currently has $3.7 billion in it. If you've never looked up to see if you and any of your relatives have money, you can do that at any point. And in fact, the money that's coming out of that unclaimed funds, that $1.7 billion, that's money that has been sitting in that account for at least 10 years. And most of it, from what lawmakers said, has been sitting in there for 18 years. But it doesn't just instantly vanish. They're giving you another 10 years to make a claim on that. So 2036 will be when that the $1.7 billion that they took from that fund, when it would technically sort of vanish from taxpayers' perspective, and it does belong to the state at that point. Of that $1.7 billion, $600 million has already been earmarked, of course, for the Cleveland Browns. That leaves a lot of money sitting in that account. That's where this one small line item veto that the governor put in or issued before he signed the bill last night, again at 11:15 at night at the State House. That plan, that fund, that sports and cultural fund, said that it had to be a minimum of a $50 million project. The governor felt that might make some projects around the state get inflated and not be true. We see the governor walking up to the podium now. Let's take you live to Columbus.
Got to bed about 12:30 this morning, so that's not horrible. Some of our team was working later than that. So, well, good morning. The budget I signed last night builds on the historic investment we have made throughout our administration to help all Ohioans live up to their God-given potential. We've done things in this budget and in our previous 3 budgets that have never been done before in Ohio. With the help and support from the General Assembly, in this budget, we've continued pushing the frontier further out as we invest significantly in the people of Ohio and in our communities throughout the state. This budget continues our historic investment in children, in mental health, in public safety, in our state parks, in our water, in our workforce, and in our future. Stronger, healthier families contribute to a stronger, healthier Ohio. This budget is the biggest investment in maternal health and efforts to reduce infant mortality in Ohio history. We continue to build on what we have done in the past. Since taking office 6 years ago, we have doubled the number of mothers and children receiving specialized home visiting care. Because of this, moms are healthier today and more babies are alive today. In this new budget, we will expand home visiting services to an additional 12,000 babies, an investment that will help make sure more babies reach their first birthday. Let me talk about child care. This budget continues the largest expansion of eligibility for child care in Ohio history, from 145% to 200% of the federal poverty level. Ohio families making up to 200% of the federal poverty level will now be eligible to receive assistance enabling more working parents to pursue an education or to join the workforce, while knowing that their children are learning and receiving quality child care. That's 20,000 more children, or 12,500 working families who will now be covered. Adoption. This budget will allow Ohio to continue to assist families who wish to establish or expand their families through adoption by offering Ohio Adoption Grant Program funds to defray adoption costs and provide incentives for those who foster, to adopt, or adopt a child with developmental disabilities. Child wellness centers. To support Ohio's most vulnerable children, our Department of Children and Youth, which we created in our last budget with the help of the state legislature, is working with local communities across the state to create new regional child wellness centers that will create placement and treatment options for children involved with child protective services. The centers will help make sure no Ohio child is ever without a comfortable and supportive place to stay, will help reunify families more quickly, and will serve more children closer to home so that their families can be involved in their treatment plans. Now let's talk about education, starting with reading, which is certainly the essential building block to everything in life. We now have over 408,000 children enrolled in the Ohio Dolly Parton Imagination Library. I want to thank my wife Fran for her leadership. I want to thank the General Assembly for their work and their support that's contained in this budget, but I also want to thank our local partners throughout the state of Ohio. This budget will help increase enrollment in the program. It will help families build more libraries of their own to encourage a love of reading and prepare more Ohio children to start kindergarten with a solid foundation of early literacy skills. Science of reading. This budget continues our efforts. I want to thank the General Assembly again for supporting these efforts to make sure that in every class in the state of Ohio, we have trained teachers who are teaching reading by using the science of reading. The new budget guarantees that each child in the state of Ohio will be taught reading in the best way that we know how, and that is, of course, with the science of reading. Science of reading is now required in all Ohio classrooms because we know it's the very best method for teaching all children how to read. This budget continues our support for science of reading literacy coaches in schools, districts throughout the state. This budget also continues funding to train teachers throughout the state in that science of reading so they can help us achieve our vision of having all children reading at or above grade level. Our children are our future, and their future success depends upon their ability to read. Let me talk about a new program that we have instituted this budget supports, and that is Children's Eyesight Program. Children must be able to see clearly to read. Our brand new Ohio See program will ensure that more students receive comprehensive eye exams and, if needed, glasses. Right now, too many Ohio students fail a vision screening at their school, but then they never receive follow-up eye care at all. We will change that, and this budget gets us started down that pathway. These students will now be referred to our free Ohio See program, We begin this program by focusing on areas of the state with the highest needs to make the most immediate and the greatest impact. Improving children's vision will improve their success at school, which is a win for students, families, and schools. Let me talk now about cell phone use in schools. This budget finalizes our administration's ban on cell phone use in schools throughout the state of Ohio. This is a vital step in protecting our children and helping them focus and learn during the school year and the school day. We know what a difference our initial cell phone policy has made in schools throughout Ohio. This new budget will allow us to build upon these positive changes so teachers can teach, children can learn, and that will occur at every classroom in the state. I want to thank John and Tina Husted for their steadfast support of these efforts. Let me talk about school-based health centers. In our last budget, we made a priority to include funding for the creation of school-based healthcare centers, and in this budget, we continue that. We have continued to expand the number of these essential health centers across the state of Ohio. We're increasing the number of children who can receive healthcare services right in their own school. Last year alone, more than 23,000 Ohio students benefited from these centers, which also provide essential healthcare service, many of them to residents of that particular community. So it's not just for the children, it's also for the adults. Let me talk about something that parents worry about, and that is school bus safety. Children must be able to travel to school safely. This budget will create brand new grant opportunities for schools to make student bus transportation more safer. As recommended by our Ohio School Bus Safety Working Group, through things such as upgrading buses or the addition of safety features to buses. Let me talk about school funding. The budget represents the largest overall school funding investment in our history. It also represents the largest investment in public school funding in Ohio history. In my first state budget, we introduced a completely new concept. We set aside significant funds, millions and millions of dollars, so that each school district in the state of Ohio could focus on the health and wellness of their students, particularly focusing on their mental health. This budget continues that, and we've now institutionalized it with 4 straight budgets. That is significant progress. We know how important mental health services are, and we know how important it is that children be healthy when they go to school. This budget continues that commitment. Merit scholarships. Our governor's Merit Scholarship has been a wildly successful program that has already ensured that more of our top students stay in Ohio for college and then live their lives in Ohio. This budget will allow us to continue encouraging Ohio's top students to stay in the state by providing $5,000 scholarships to every student in the top 5% of their graduating class, public and private schools, no matter where they are from in the state of Ohio. Already more than 10,000 students from all 88 counties have accepted this scholarship and chosen to stay in Ohio for college, making them much more likely to live, work, and raise a family in Ohio. If we look at the net gain and look at what we would have projected this top 5% of students, what colleges they would have gone to, what percent in Ohio, we have dramatically increased that percent. And just in the first 2 years, that's a total of 2,700 new students who would not have stayed in Ohio, who are staying in Ohio to go to college. Also, in this budget, we're now guaranteed admission to the main campus at every state college or university for all Ohio students in the top 5% of their graduating class. No longer will we hear parents tell us, my student, my son, my daughter is at the top of my class, they can't get into the main campus. Those days are over. Tech prep. This budget continues our administration's emphasis on job creation and job training and career pathways. We will establish tech prep regional centers, and they will be established in each region of the state to work with local school districts to expand career tech education in all of our schools. It will support career planning and increase mentorship opportunities for our students. OCOG, the Ohio College Opportunity Grant Program. With this new budget, we're making, again, the largest investment in the state's history for Ohio students with the highest levels of financial need through the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. Further, we're continuing support for students attending community colleges and those students pursuing STEM degrees so that Ohio students are equipped to fulfill the needs of the state's employers today and in the future. This budget also continues support for our Tech Cred program, which helps Ohioans earn the skills they need to keep up with the rapidly changing tech-infused economy by enrolling in short-term training to earn new credentials. This has been very successful, and we have so many people that are taking advantage of it. This program helps employers invest in their employees so they can have a more skilled workforce to keep pace with new technological changes in the workplace. And speaking of technological changes and the jobs of the future, this budget will help Miami University and the Cleveland Clinic make significantly more progress with the Cleveland Clinic's quantum computing program. This partnership will train the next generation of talented students and future members of the workforce with expertise in using advanced computers to solve complex problems much, much faster. Ohio is already a leader in funding outcomes and successes based on the number of students completing courses, certificates, and degrees. In this budget, we take this one step further. Another crucial measure of success is the number of graduates who enter the workforce. And so this budget makes Ohio the first state in the nation to tie a significant portion of funding for colleges and universities to the number of graduates actually getting jobs. And we will measure that, and part of what the colleges will get will be based in money, will be based upon that. This means our colleges will be rewarded for delivering real results for students and families so more people realize their version of the American dream. As we invest in our workforce, we're also continuing to invest in economic development throughout the state. One of these investments is in our brownfield remediation program. Over the years, we've helped transform hundreds of unsafe, blighted, abandoned sites into new centers of economic opportunity across our state. This budget continues that investment. Since launching this program in 2021, we've been able to fund 681 projects in 86 counties to clean up industrial, commercial, and institutional brownfield sites and redevelop and revitalize neighborhoods and attract new economic development, attract new jobs, new companies to come into those areas. This budget continues to build upon this important work to rejuvenate our communities. Let me now talk about the veterinary school at Ohio State. One of the things that I've been concerned about for a long time is the fact that we are not turning out enough Ohio graduates from our veterinary school. Ohio State is the only veterinary school we have in the state of Ohio. And as Fran and I travel, particularly in our rural parts of the state of Ohio, we hear people tell us about the shortage of veterinarians, particularly in the large animal field. So I went to Ohio State and said that we have to change this. They came back to us with a proposal. This budget contains the money for that proposal. Their commitment is that they will expand significantly the number of students who are admitted each year to the college, and that every one of those students, every one of the new students that we're paying for with this particular language will be from the state of Ohio. If you want someone to come from Adams, if you want to have veterinarians in Adams County or Vinton County or any number of different counties, you have to find people to be admitted to the school who are from that area. That's how you increase that and deal with that problem. So this is one of the things that this budget does, in fact, contain. Something else that we've talked about a lot, and frankly, we've seen some real progress. We want all Ohioans with disabilities to be able to live up to their God-given potential. If you look at Ohio's growing workforce, we need contributions of all our citizens, including those with disabilities. As governor, I'm proud that this budget is the largest investment in Ohioans with disabilities in Ohio history. Through opportunities for Ohioans with disabilities, this budget will enable us to help 8,000 more Ohioans each and every year. Continuing on the job issue, let's talk about those who are coming out of prison. We also need those who are formerly incarcerated to participate in our workforce. Each year, 18,000 men and women are released from the Ohio prison system. That's a lot of people. The new budget allows us to continue expanding our pre-release vocational training and education for in-demand job programs to give those coming out of prison a second chance at life and the opportunity to live up to their full potential. Since the start of our administration, we have made historic investments in the accessibility of mental health treatment across the state of Ohio. Reducing the stigma of mental health illness and providing treatment to anyone in crisis remains one of our absolute top priorities. Because of the help and support from the General Assembly, Ohio has become a national leader in addressing the mental health crisis. And this budget continues to expand our commitment to building a mental health system across the state of Ohio. Through this budget, we increase access to mental health services in our communities. 988 Crisis Hotline. As part of that effort, this budget invests in Ohio's 988 Crisis and Suicide Lifeline, which has received more than 560,000 communications from people in crisis since its inception. This budget ensures that more people will have the opportunity to find the help they need during a behavioral health crisis. Continuing on in the area of mental health. This budget increases our investment to expand youth mobile response and crisis stabilization services to all 88 counties. These services provide structured face-to-face behavioral health crisis intervention within 60 minutes after the call is placed, no matter where you live in the state of Ohio, for individuals under the age of 21. This is revolutionary. This program will bring relief to families who can now be assured that in the event of a behavioral health crisis, a single phone call means that help will soon be on the way. Let me now turn to public safety. The most important function of government is to protect its citizens. And throughout our administration, we've made extraordinary investments in state and local law enforcement and other programs to do just that. We are a local government state, and these investments are made to help our local law enforcement agencies. There's over 1,000 of them in the state of Ohio. This budget continues important funding for the Ohio Narcotics Intelligence Center, which has been vigilant in keeping dangerous drugs out of our neighborhoods and communities. We created this with the help of the legislature in 2019. And since then, state and local law enforcement have worked together to fight against drug trafficking through a comprehensive approach. This budget allows us to continue providing that help to local law enforcement. Continues more resources and education to our local law enforcement agencies to fight back against dangerous narcotics. Let me now turn to drivers' training. We know that young people who go through driver's training become safer drivers, safer for themselves and safer for everyone else on the road. And that's not just true for young people, it's true for adults. In our last budget, we included funding to address barriers that we know keep kids from assessing driver's training through grants for low-income families. We continue that in this budget. We continue those grants. Additionally, we know that the most dangerous group of drivers on the road for themselves and for others are 18 and 19-year-olds. If we look at the bigger group, it's 18 to 25-year-old. Part of the reason is because once, under current Ohio law, once an individual turns 18, they're no longer required to take driver's training. So we have so many young people turning 18, never taking driver's training, and they go in and ultimately, sometimes after many failures, pass. Not acceptable. and I made that very, very clear some time ago. In this budget, we're protecting all Ohioans on the road, new drivers and seasoned drivers. This budget requires all drivers under the age of 21 to go through driver's training. That is a big change. I thank the General Assembly for that. This not only protects young drivers, it also protects everyone on our streets and on our highways. School safety centers. When taking office in 2019, one of the first priorities was looking at how we can make our schools safer for our kids. What we found at the time was that there was no centralized entity in the state that schools could turn to. No group that was responsible for the safety of our children during the school day or helping the local schools deal with that. So we created the Ohio School Safety Center in 2019. Today we have regional liaisons all across Ohio from the center who are part of the culture in our schools to train people every day to prepare for and respond to threats and to acts of violence. This new budget that I signed last night builds on that expertise and the other resources that the Ohio School Safety Center has given our local schools to protect our kids. 911, next generation. When Ohioans are experiencing an emergency, they deserve to know that help is on the way as quickly as possible. That's exactly what Next Generation 911 does. Ohio is improving the technology used when dispatchers answer a 911 call and direct local services right to the location. Today, with this change, things are getting better, and they'll be able to pinpoint exactly where that person is. Thanks to these upgrades, Ohioans will soon have modernized options to interact with 911, including via text message, smart watches, other wearable technology, home security systems, and vehicle systems as well. Big, big change. Dispatchers will be able to use exact GPS to pinpoint the location of callers. When dealing with emergencies, seconds count. And Next Generation 911 is saving those valuable seconds and precious lives. Now let me turn to how the budget helps protect Ohio's precious natural resources. H2 Ohio. We created H2 Ohio at the beginning of our administration, something brand new, to protect Lake Erie, to reduce harmful algae bloom, and improve water quality throughout the state. Through this program, we have invested more in water quality and protecting our water than any point in Ohio history. This was a brand new program. H2 Ohio is the first comprehensive effort of its kind in Ohio. We have seen promising outcomes. What started with a focus in Northwest Ohio has now been expanded statewide and includes Ohio's largest rivers. Today, more than 3,000 farmers in Northwest Ohio are following best practices on more than 2.2 million acres of farmland to reduce nutrient runoff. Prior to the creation of H2 Ohio, some communities did not have proper drinking water access. Today, many of those do, and we continue to work on that. H2 Ohio has removed lead pipes from over 183 daycares in Ohio and set the stage for a long-term solution to improving Ohio's water quality, one that Ohio individuals and families deserve. And I'll have more to talk about that in the future. Let me turn to our state parks. Our state parks, our natural areas, are the finest in the country. Our parks are better than they've ever been before because of the much-needed investment in infrastructure that has been made with the legislature's help over the last 6 years. Our newest state park, Great Council, which opened last year in Greene County, represents and preserves Ohio's Native American history and culture. And all of our state parks remain free, making us just one of 8 states in this country that doesn't charge an entry fee. So I'm very pleased that the budget continues these historic investments to continue protecting and improving Ohio's 76 state parks so that families can enjoy beautiful, safe, natural landscape for hiking, fishing, exploring, looking at birds, whatever they want to do, and be able to do that well into the future. Now let me talk about funding for Ohio's sports facilities. Thought I'd get your attention there for that one. I said from the beginning that my goal was to make sure that no longer do we use general fund taxpayers' dollars to support stadiums in the state of Ohio. Some of our stadiums are aging, many of them are. We know from past history that there will be requests for the state to participate in helping those stadiums. Stadiums, professional sports are important, just like the theater, just like other culture. These are some of the things that make Ohio great, some of the things that make it fun to live in Ohio. So we support these, and we've done so for the last 50 years, and we will continue to do so. My goal when this issue came up was to take a holistic approach, not just to look at one team, not just to look at one area, but to take a holistic approach to how we were going to approach this. This budget does that, and I thank the General Assembly for doing that. We needed a permanent solution for requests that come to the state to help fund these stadiums, again, without relying on general fund dollars. As you know, this budget creates a new fund. This new fund will not only support major league sports facilities, but also minor league facilities, cultural facilities, playhouses, symphonies, other concert venues. This is a win for taxpayers, and it will provide significant money for things that improve the quality of life in Ohio. This is a win for our cities that get this economic impact. And it's a win for the state of Ohio and the exposure we get every time we see one of our teams on national TV. Let me talk for a moment about tax relief. In every budget I have signed, we have collaborated with the General Assembly on tax relief. This budget continues significant income tax relief for many Ohioans, particularly married couples, the new flat income tax. Let me now move to some of the vetoes that I issued, and I'm sure we'll get questions. So. There was language in the budget. Somebody fell down. There was language in the budget in regard to SNAP purchases. We deleted that. We intend, though, to make a request to the federal government. We want this, however, to be more targeted. We also were concerned, frankly, about some of the language in what was in the bill. The Ohio Department of Jobs and Family Services is now in the process of requesting a waiver from the federal government that would prevent the purchase of many sugar-sweetened beverages using SNAP. I support not using SNAP to purchase these beverages. However, the budget language would have brought an extra layer of complexity that could serve to delay the approval and implementation of the sugar-sweetened beverage waiver that we are in the process of trying to get. In addition to sending the waiver request, I'm appointing a working group to study this issue. We'll have more about that in the future. I also issued a veto of a provision that would have eliminated the continuous Medicaid enrollment of children under the age of 4. The continuous enrollment policy was approved by the General Assembly in my previous budget, and it's done through a federally approved waiver. We should not change that. We know that children who receive consistent primary care are able to have the best start in life. My veto will continue our administration's policy of supporting mothers, babies, young children in need in their most formative years. Let me turn to another veto involving South Bass Island State Park. This was about reimbursing local first responding agencies for runs at South Bass Island State Park. I issued this veto because I believe we must take a more holistic approach to this issue. With our 76 state parks across Ohio and many calls coming in annually for law enforcement, fire, and emergency assistance, we have to take a more holistic approach. We have to look at this from the point of view of what goes on in every one of the 76 state parks and how the state can be of help to local law enforcement, to local first responders. So I am going to convene a working group to study this issue statewide and determine how the state can help local law enforcement and first responders who incur costs when rendering assistance in our state parks. Every Ohioan who goes to a state park has an interest in getting fast response. We also have to be concerned about the local township where that state park might be located, where this work of responding to accidents at state parks and other things may be a great drain on their budget. So we have to come up to some balance here. Let me move to the issue of dredging. Maintaining Ohio's many lakes and other waterways is certainly a top priority of our administration. We spend money every year on dredging. Last night, I vetoed a provision related to dredging 3 lakes because an earmark mandating these projects would have restricted the funding we use for our state parks. It was taken out of one bucket, which would have created a significant problem for us. However, I am announcing today that our administration, through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, is committed to undertaking these 3 dredging projects, and we will do them, and we will do them within this biennium, as prescribed in the original language in the budget. That's at Grand Lake St. Mary's, it's at Indian Lake, and Lake Loramie. And we will do this using other Ohio Department of Natural Resources funds. So people in those communities should not worry. We will take care of this, and we will do this. The issue of property taxes is such a great concern, we know, for so many Ohioans. It is the tax that I hear the most about. It's the one tax, frankly, I hear about. And I'm sure that is true for members of the General Assembly. They hear about that as well. Property tax increases across Ohio have strained many family budgets and endangered the financial security of many on fixed incomes. In signing this budget, I line item vetoed several provisions related to property taxes. I did so, and I will just say that I felt that these ideas were thoughtful, but I was also concerned that imposing them now, all of them at once, on our local schools would create a huge, huge problem. And none of them guaranteed what we would end up with. So again, for the members of the legislature who worked on this, thank you for that hard work. These are very thoughtful ideas. I look forward to working with the leadership and with the members of the General Assembly in coming up to a long-term solution in this area. Signing these vetoes does not lessen our obligation and does not lessen our obligation to deal with this problem. So we must address these legitimate concerns that Ohio voters are talking to us about. Accordingly, I will be convening a working group to be formalized and announced in the coming weeks, which will make recommendations to the General Assembly and to me on how we can provide meaningful property tax relief to Ohioans and still fund our schools, and fund our critical services. I look forward to working with the General Assembly on this very important issue. This budget, finally, is guided by the same core values that have guided us in our previous 3 budgets. Our goal every day is to remove the barriers and provide the opportunities so all Ohioans can live up to their full God-given potential. Governing is about priorities, and that is why we have focused on our past 4 budgets and on this budget on what matters most: our children, our families, jobs, workforce, strengthening our communities so that all Ohioans, no matter what age, can continue to thrive. This budget helps us achieve these goals. I thank the General Assembly for their work in regard to this and to working with us on this. We're happy to take questions.
The General Assembly has their own study committee, and they came out with dozens of recommendations for property tax relief at the start of this year. It's been an ongoing issue for 2+ years now. Why do you think another working group is needed?
Well, I think another working, we have to do it. I think that, after hearing from many Ohioans, I felt that the provisions in this budget would put an undue, very abrupt, create a significant problem for our local school districts. And we have to find solutions to our property tax problem. But look, I'm an optimist. But as I looked at those and imposing those right away in this budget, all of them, I felt that this was not going to be good for our students. Ultimately, the only thing that matters is our students, and I felt that created a real problem.
You signed the flat tax, which, to make up for it, cut a lot of social services that benefit people who are primarily lower income. When you say that you want everyone to thrive in Ohio, why sign a tax cut that benefits the wealthiest?
Well, I won't accept all your premises there to start with, but the question is why I signed it. The answer is I can count.
Meaning?
I can count votes in the General Assembly.
Governor, the budget takes a lot of money from unclaimed funds to give the Browns the $600 million. Do you have any concerns about using money that's just fundamentally doesn't belong to the state for this purpose?
Yeah. Well, as you know, that was not my first choice. I had another way of doing it. But governors don't get everything they want. Nobody gets everything they want in life. And so the criteria I set forward was it had to be holistic. Couldn't be just about the Browns. It had to be about all our teams in Ohio and future teams, because we're going to get some women's professional sports, more teams coming in. We just heard about the WNBA team in Cleveland. And this will continue to be, an issue. So my criteria is it had to be holistic, it had to be universal, but it also would not spend money out of the general fund that directly competes with education, directly competes with mental health. Stadiums should not compete with mental health. Stadiums should not compete with education. And so this budget, while it didn't do it the way I originally designed it, does that. And that was those two things were my first priorities.
Did you have any misgivings initially? Did it take some convincing and some dark nights of the soul to get there, or was it sort of like once you saw it, okay, this would work?
Well, we all are invested in our own ideas, and our own thoughts and how we want to do things. But what I try to keep in mind is what the end game is, and what I always try to analyze when I'm in a dispute with anyone, or not a dispute, but a conversation with anyone. We're talking about how to do things different ways. What's important to me? What do I think is the most core values here? And to me, the biggest objectives were no taxpayers' dollars used for this, in the sense of nothing coming out of the general fund, nothing competing against education, and it couldn't just be about the Browns. It had to be a universal. And so this proposal, which the legislature wanted to do, satisfied those two things. And when you get the two prime objectives, it seems to me it's time to say, yeah, I'm achieving what I wanted to achieve. I mean, it is a pretty big achievement when you think about it, that if this is done right, no time in the future, long after I'm gone, long after this legislature is gone, no time in the future will it be necessary to take tax dollars to fix up a Great American Ballpark, or to fix up any other field in the state. And it's going to also provide money for cultural activities as well. So, look, it wasn't my choice of where to take the money, but I achieved the two objectives that I thought were the most important.
Brown's provisions, Governor, regarding altering the state's Arkansas law, as well as changing Tioga County sin tax to make sure the Browns keep their share of the money.
Yeah, well, you know, as far as the Modell law, I obviously, as Attorney General, used that law in regard to the crew. I think if the language would have abolished the Modell law, I would have vetoed it. It didn't abolish it. What it did say is if as long as that team was staying in Ohio, then it didn't apply. That team's going out of Ohio. And so we, I think, in the state have to be somewhat neutral between things going back and forth between cities. So that fit that criteria for me. That was a difference in there. As far as the syntax, these are difficult things, but this money historically has been used, and is, you know, you can divide that money up. So we'll see what the voters want to do.
Governor, can you give us your thought process on vetoing the part of this with the library and the LGBTQ plus materials?
Sure. I mean, look, we heard from a lot of librarians, heard from a lot of different people. I thought that it was not workable. You know, I think as parents or grandparents, no one wants their child to have, you know, a book or something that is inappropriate, something that is obscene. But I just felt that the language simply just did not work. You know, because it goes really to, doesn't just say book, it goes to content, and it goes to material content within any kind of book. I just don't think it works very well, and so that's why I vetoed it.
Governor, you said you tell Morgan that you can count votes in the General Assembly, but there are Republican lawmakers on Twitter who are already clamoring for veto overrides. How much is this budget veto override proof, and how much did your consideration of that factor into those other vetoes?
Well, look, I think we always, you know, look to see what we think the legislature will do. But, you know, feel strongly about the vetoes I issued. But we have a constitutional process, and we have you know, in Ohio, we have a great system, as we do in most states, checks and balances, and so then everybody has a turn to make a move. I made my move. My move was to veto things that I thought were not good for the state of Ohio, and the legislature now can do what they do. You know, I obviously I think that my vetoes were valid, but you know, we'll see what the legislature wants to do.
Do you think that flat tax will provide a similar sort of benefit as to the child tax credit that you originally wanted to look at?
Well, again, you know, life is about choices, and you know, I stated what I thought was the best tax cut, and the legislature did not follow that. So, you know, I'm not allowed to write things into the budget. You know, I can veto, but I can't write in. So.
How quickly? Sorry.
Okay, what's coming out from conservative groups like Buckeye and some of the GOP lawmakers is concern about the constitutional amendment to abolish property taxes. The concern is by vetoing this, it makes it more likely that we might see that on the ballot. So I'm wondering, with this task force, are you going to have a timeline? Is there a hard goal towards reform? And do you have any concerns?
Well, I don't speak for the General Assembly, but I speak for myself. I think, you know, the idea behind our task force is to try to come up with something. What I'm particularly concerned about is the fact that, you know, we do have Ohioans who are hurting, and that's very, very clear. You know, we have Ohioans who have lived in their home for many years. They paid their mortgage off, but now they're on fixed income, and now their property tax continues to go up. So, you know, trying to figure out how we deal with that, I think, is very important, and that's why I put a working group together.
Did you have concern about any particular property tax provisions as being more onerous than the others? You kind of said too much too fast, but any in specific that you're going to have?
Well, I think we kind of outlined it in our veto message. I mean, you know, I'm not going to go through each one of them, but I think that, you know, that collectively they created a problem for the schools. You know, I speak for myself. I think, you know, we have Ohioans who have lived in their home for many years. They paid their mortgage off, but now they're on fixed income, and now their property tax continues to go up. So, you know, trying to figure out how we deal with that, I think, is very important, and that's why I put a working group together.
Did you have concern about any particular property tax provisions as being more onerous than the others? You kind of said too much too fast, but any in specific that you're going to have?
I'll just let it go at that for now, anyway.
Going back to the unclaimed funds, Vetoes urged you to veto that, saying it's unconstitutional. Are you worried that this could end up tied up in court?
Well, that's what we have courts for. I remember when I was an assistant county prosecutor, I was 25, and I thought I knew a lot, and I sometimes would argue with the old judge we had back in Greene County. I thought he was old. I don't know how old he really was, but he'd look at me and say, "Mr. DeWine," he says, "that's why God made the Court of Appeals." And so, if people don't like things, they can go to court, and that's what we have in our system. So we'll see. I don't ever, judge what a court is going to do. That's part of our system.
Governor, you vetoed a sales tax exemption for data centers. These facilities don't employ many people in Ohio. They are putting a huge power suck on the grid. Why do they deserve this tax treatment?
Look, these centers enable Ohio to grow. It's not just the number of people who are employed at that data center. It's what having that data center does to attract other business around. The other thing that's not ever talked about, or very rarely talked about, is what impact that data center has on the local school. And it is significant. And, there's some numbers have been produced. I don't have them in front of me. But those data centers can significantly help local schools in the sense that they don't employ a lot of people. They don't put a lot of people in school. But what they do is because of the valuation, they add a lot to that tax base. But that's one thing we don't talk about. The main thing is, if we want Ohio to move forward, we have to move with history. We cannot be behind history. We have to be ahead of history, and we have to be with it and with the flow. And the flow is that data centers are important, and they're important to our future. We're working through the issue of, they take a lot of electricity. And so one of the things that, what they can do, they can go behind the meter and generate or contract with someone to generate the electricity that they need. So this was pretty universal from anyone who looked at how Ohio is growing or how we need to grow in the future.
Governor, I believe this is the highest number of vetoes in a state budget that you have presided over. What do you account for that for? Did you feel freer since this is your last state budget, or was it more contrary quality of the issues?
Oh, I'm probably not going to answer that. It's how it came out. I mean, look, the process is we get this, we know some of the stuff that's already in there. So I've been thinking about some of these things for some time. But until you actually get the budget, there's just language in there that you did not anticipate, or maybe that we didn't catch, or maybe it was put in late. So what you do is you just, it's quite a interesting process. A lot of people on our team, goes through it, and then I literally sit down, and we sat down for a number of days over the weekend, Friday and all through the weekend, and just went through item by item, and I'm calling balls and strikes. And so if I see something that I think is not good for the state of Ohio, I weigh whether I should veto it or not. So it's just the way it came out. It's how the score ended up. We didn't intend anything. So you got to follow up. Go ahead.
Can I quickly follow up?
Yeah.
What's your thought process? I mean, sometimes as these things pass, or as you see them, do you just immediately know, no, that's coming out?
Well, yeah, sometimes, yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, look, you see that, oh, no, that's not going to work, But a lot of times, look, the legislature's thoughtful when they put these in, and so, and there's somebody behind each item, and somebody has thought about it, and so you have to think about it. I always try to put myself in their position. What are they thinking? What's the other side of this? And so when I'll sit down with my team, I'll say, okay, look, this doesn't look good, but what's the other side of this story? Why is this coming in here? What are the advocates saying about it? What do they do? And, sometimes we look at it and say, hey, my first impression's wrong. Let's go with it. Let's leave it alone. Let's don't veto it. Each one, it's literally balls and strikes on each pitch, every single one. That's how we do it. Look, doesn't mean we're right, but I'm the guy that happens to be the governor, so I get the opportunity to do that. Now the legislature get their shot again. So.
What were your concerns about the language in there regarding youth homeless shelters and gender affirming care?
Well, if you look at that, it was a very specific veto on language. Look, we want, this is nothing new, we want homeless shelters to be open and for everyone. And that's kind of it.
The federal government seems poised to make major slashes to Medicaid. When it comes to your signing, you signed a provision that could immediately, if the federal government does something, could immediately take about 800,000 Ohioans out of their health insurance. What does this say to those people?
Well, let me answer it this way. I had the opportunity to appoint John Husted to the United States Senate. He is someone who has a deep background in understanding Medicaid. Doesn't mean he gets everything he wants. I don't either. None of us do. But I just want to thank him for his work on the bill that's taking place right now. Look, we want to be able to continue coverage. We hope we can continue coverage. But until we see a final bill, we don't know exactly where we are. But Medicaid coverage is vitally important. It's vitally important, particularly for children. Who else?
This is your last budget. How do you want Ohioans to remember you? Have you thought what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Oh, I don't do legacy very well. We'll let other people do that. Look, we try. I mean, I'm pretty transparent about what I want and what I think, and that is we want everybody to live up to their full potential. And you can kind of put everything we do under that, whether it's from someone with disabilities who we want to get more of them in the workforce and more of them living independently, or to a baby. We want that baby to be a high birth rate, high birth weight baby or average. We don't want a real low. I mean, these are all things that have to do with the ability of that person to live up to their full potential. So we're bringing a lot of jobs to Ohio, and we got to have people who can live up to their full potential and take those jobs. And so those two things kind of come together. But we also look. I mean, what we've done. I'm very, very proud of what we've done with our state parks. We've gone back and fixed the infrastructure. And these are things that, again, quality of life. And when people think about Ohio, I want them to think about the quality of life here. This is a great place to live. And we want to continue to try to tell the world that. So.
Governor, you're a long-time proponent of school choice. What made the non-charter educational savings accounts step too far for you?
No accountability at all. Just no accountability. These are tax dollars. Unlike the charter schools, unlike the other schools where we have some accountability, we know what's going on. So yeah.
Governor, on driver's ed, with changing the floor to 21, does the state have enough capacity, especially in rural areas, to support that education?
Yeah. Look, we will continue to work to expand. One of the things that was in our original budget, as you know, was to putting more emphasis on that. We're going to continue to work with schools. I think schools should look at this as an opportunity. Schools do a lot of different things, but schools having the opportunity to have driver's training back in the schools, I think, makes a lot of sense. But the market will expand also. If there is a demand, there's always people who are willing to fill that demand. And so, the market will help in that area as well. We just have seen this. We see it with young people who no longer take driver's ed at 15 and a half or 16, and they just wait. And, there's reasons why they wait. It's because of cost sometimes, because of convenience sometimes. So, yeah, you're right in the sense that we have to do both. I mean, I think, we know that somebody who's had driver's training is statistically a better driver, and we know that they're less likely to kill somebody or kill themselves. But we also, have to make sure that there's a supply there as well. So, yeah, we have to work on both. No doubt about that. Anybody else?
Lieutenant Governor, if I may ask you a question real quick. Now that we are through this budget season, getting closer to 2026, have you given any more thought to jumping in the race?
Well, you're not going to get a headline from me here today. This is about the budget, but I'm glad you called me up here because 140 days ago, we were right here, and it's been amazing watching the governor, and people ask all the time, especially going through this budget, what's he all about? And he cares about every person and everything. And it's been amazing to watch. How do you do that? There's 12 million people. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of programs and causes and initiatives and challenges. And, well, the way he does it is he's got a great team. It starts with Fran over there, and she's a little bit of his conscience in the background at times, and he's got great advisors there with Christine and Annie and Mike and Laurel, and he's got all these agency directors, and Director Murnick's back here worked like crazy on this budget, and his legislative team, it's amazing, you know, what Giles and Aaron and Lindsay and all those folks, you know, take care of, and his policy teams with Scott and that whole crew, his legal team with Matt and that whole team. Here's how he does it. I've been behind the curtain for 140 days. He's got a great team, and he cares about everyone in this state reaching their potential. That's not just a cliche. And he cares about every little thing. It's been fun to watch how he takes care of things. So with that, I'm glad you gave me a chance to come up and say hello. No news on this front.
So let me conclude by just thanking members of the legislature, thanking their staff who work very, very, very hard. I want to thank our team as well. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor. The Lieutenant Governor has been very, very helpful. Always has great comments as we go through and look at each one of these items. It's some of these are not easy, but again, we try to do our best and kind of call it like we see it. You get the last one.
You told me in December at the press breakfast that after the budget you have more on capital punishment. So obviously the budget was signed, you know.
So yes, you have a good memory, and yes, I guess.
I was just curious where you were at and if you.
Yeah, I owe you an answer, but not today. Thanks, everybody.
Dan DeRose with 19 News as the governor wraps up his comments on a $60 billion biennium budget. This is a budget for the next 2 years. I've spent a lot of time in Columbus during this budget process with both the House and the Senate, and we've always wondered where the governor stood on a lot of issues. And today we find out. I thought it was very interesting when the governor talked specifically about the sports and cultural unclaimed funds issue. He spoke about the issue, what it can do for the state, that it makes the state an attractive place to live. People like their sports, they like their culture, but not once in the beginning when he was initially talking about it did he ever say the team Cleveland Browns. He talked specifically about the funds, what it does for the state, that it creates this pot of money for years and years to come. He said long after he is gone, that fund will still be there and still have the ability to pay for fields, orchestras, symphonies, buildings, museums, to help keep the state an attractive place to live and raise a family. It was only until we got to the question part did he really sort of kind of tip his hand a little bit to where he said he did not want this, whatever the solution was. He had two goals. They didn't raise taxes on sports gambling. That's how the governor wanted to pay for it. So the legislature found their own way to pay for it. But he said, look, here are my two goals. He did not want the money to come out of the general fund. And the general fund is just that. That's where education is paid for, mental health, transportation, fixing our roads, bridges. That all comes out of the general fund. What the legislature did was create a new fund by taking unclaimed funds. This pot of money that's sitting on the side, it's a rather large pot of money, $3.7 billion, and use that money. So that creates one of his goals. The second goal was that it was not just about the Cleveland Browns, that this needed to be a solution for minor league teams, for every field in the state, and that's what the governor has done. It's a massive, massive budget when it comes to, and that's why it had to be done today. July 1st starts fiscal year 2026, and so that's where we are. 2026, 2025, or 2027. That's the spending for this budget and for the next 2 years. So we're going to have more on this, of course, in our newscast. Our 11 o'clock is underway on Cleveland's 43, and then you'll see our noon news, and I'll have a quick wrap up on the budget in that on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News. Have a good afternoon.